Hello, word lovers, and welcome back to Hello Word. I'm your host, Alex, and I'm thrilled to have you join me for another linguistic adventure. Today, we're diving into a fascinating C1 level verb, concede. What does it mean to concede something? Simply put, it means to admit that something is true or valid after first denying or resisting it. Think of it as acknowledging a point or fact, even if you don't necessarily like it. It's often used when someone is finally willing to agree with something they initially opposed. Concede is a formal word and implies a reluctance to admit something. You won't often hear it used for simple, everyday admissions, like I concede that I'm hungry. Instead, it's used for more complex situations where there's been a degree of disagreement or resistance. Let's explore some synonyms for concede. One very common synonym is admit. For example, she had to admit that he was right, despite her initial reservations. Another synonym is acknowledge. We might say, the government acknowledged the need for further investment in education. Then there's grant, which is similar to concede, but often implies a more formal or legal context. An example, the judge granted that the evidence was admissible in court. We can also use the word recognize, as in the company finally recognized the impact of their actions on the environment. Finally, we have yield, which suggests giving way to pressure or superior argument. After hours of debate, he finally yielded to their demands. Now, let's turn to antonyms. What words express the opposite of concede? The most obvious antonym is deny. An example would be, he denied all the allegations made against him. Another antonym is refute, which means to prove something is false. For example, the scientist refuted the claims made by his opponent. We can also use reject, as in the committee rejected the proposal outright. Then there's dispute, which means to argue against something. For example, they disputed the results of the election. Finally, there is contest, that expresses a stronger dispute, as in they contested the will in court. Now, let's see how we might use concede in everyday life. Imagine you're arguing with a friend about which restaurant to go to. You might finally say, okay, I concede, let's go to your favorite place. Or perhaps you're discussing politics with someone who holds a different view. You might say, I don't agree with everything you're saying, but I concede that you've raised some valid points. You could also use it in a sports context. After losing the first set, the player had to concede that his opponent was playing exceptionally well. Here are some more examples of concede in sentences. The company was forced to concede defeat in the face of overwhelming public opposition. She reluctantly conceded that he was a better chess player. He conceded the election after the vote count showed a clear victory for his opponent. They were unwilling to concede any ground in the negotiations. Even his strongest supporters had to concede that he had made a mistake. Here are some examples of concede in phrases. Concede defeat, meaning to admit you have lost. Concede a point, meaning to agree that someone has made a valid argument. Concede that, meaning to admit that something is true. Be forced to concede, showing something needed to be admitted, but someone did not wish to. Reluctantly concede, showing that the thing that was being admitted was unwanted. Okay, let's recap. Concede means to admit that something is true, often reluctantly. Synonyms include admit, acknowledge, grant, recognize, and yield. Antonyms include deny, refute, reject, dispute, and contest. Remember, concede is a strong word, suggesting some initial resistance to the idea being admitted. Thank you for joining me on Hello Word today. I hope you found this exploration of the word concede helpful. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future word adventures. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review. Your support helps other language learners discover our show. Now, for your challenge. I encourage you to create your own sentence using the word concede and share it in the comments below. Let's see your creative uses of this powerful verb. I'll be back next week with another word to explore. Until then, happy learning.